Good morning and welcome.
Yeah, good morning to you too. Good to
Yeah,
see you.
good to see you. So what's
So,
top of mind of these days?
uh, random thoughts. Yeah, the question to me comes up is, are random thoughts intentional, even if they're random? Do we plant seeds to get these to come up for us at some future point, even if we don't quite put it on an agenda?
I also think of it this way. There's things we think about that we don't think are at the right time, and then it keeps coming back until it's the right time.
Yeah, and the question that comes up for me is like, when is the right time?
There's the $1,000 question.
And when do you know it's the right time? Like, what do you need as a cue or a sign or an affirmation that it's actually this is the time? And then we preface it the right time.
Yeah, I find for myself, I tend to capture a lot of different things that I can't put a time frame on. And then when something comes up, I go back and look at those other points to see if those were clues or actual points in the time frame to think about. And then the question is, what do I do with it? Is it a priority now? Is it something I'm going to work on? Or is it just something I wanted to know and keep track of?
So I'll connect this with something I really value deeply, self-awareness
Hmm.
in context of time and who. Is that only about us when we decide it's the right time, or is that in consideration of another?
I think it's both. So my habit is when I'm tracking things, sometimes I'm tracking them because I can think of a client, I can think of something they're going through, and this is a pointer to something, but it's not necessarily on point. It's just there. Um, Other times it's for me because I'm sort of trying to figure something out and the dots are starting to drop into place. And I go, I need to remember that, but I'm not quite sure where to put it. But then when it gets to a critical point, you sort of go, now I have a choice to make. I can act on it, not act on it, file it, keep it. But there is a decision point you arrive at, I think, that says what you're going to do with this sort of random thought, these random little pieces that have popped up. So, for example, I find it interesting that organizations are still writing massive strategic plans to go 25 years or 3 years into the future, very extreme windows. And yet, when you look at economists tracking macro things, saying these decisions today impact, have these implications tomorrow, I find that such a very different contrast because they're saying things like, so that kindergarten class now in 20 years is going to be on your door as potential workers. So if you look at the size of the kindergarten class now, it's been shrinking. So we go 20 years into the future. What size of that group of people knocking on your door? And it's interesting when you look at the long-term think and the short-term think and what you're tracking. It's easier to track the short-term things, but it's a different question to track the long-term things, the decisions you make today and how they impact a future state of tomorrow. So it's interesting to me that people don't do that because they're just chasing down the next quarter or the next year or maybe the next 3 years. The thing I never see is them actually saying, what am I doing with those random thoughts? So for me, I just help people capture them. I also find it helps me sleep better at night because I can go to a place and say, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about that instead of just trying to use my brain to always process it. And then the intentionality becomes very clear about what you're going to do with it.
Yeah, it's even the connection of global events that are from moment to moment, day to day,
Yes.
and how they impact us. I mean, I don't drive at the same time. trying to follow the price of gas, the purchase of gas, and then there's the forecast of that. They say, well, tomorrow it's going to go down so much, or it's going to go up. Do you wait? You will not wait. All these things that are passing through uh, our presentation of information to for us to make a decision on,
Mhm.
and how that impacts our lives.
It's and that information is rolling at such a speed now that you always have to wonder if is this thing going to be alive tomorrow or this evening or the next morning or the next day? Was it a blip? Was it a pattern? Was it a trend? Um, is it something I can rely on? Is it something I'm not sure about? So you go through these sort of micro decisions in the moment. And I always ask the question what people are using for their filter. So you got all this coming at you. How do you actually tease it out and filter it out? And I think that's part of the transition we're going through right now because we're not the stable structures that I grew up with. For example, the Globe and Mail and the Toronto Star appeared in a mailbox. You paid a quarter to get the paper out of the mailbox, and then you went and plowed through this paper. And then once you're kind of done with it, you cut out anything you wanted, and everything else kind of went somewhere else. Not today. Today, you go online and the paper's changing every hour. You see updated 9:15, updated 2:30, updated 4:30. Your brain goes, so what changed in this article from this morning to tonight? So that's what I mean by the how we look at all the information that surrounds us is really an interesting challenge. And then what do you keep? What do you record? What do you act on? For what? Why is it so important to act on it? Is it for me? Is it for society? Is it for general well-being of the community? There's a lot of factors now the average person goes through. And if I'm really just curious to see how popular I am, I'm gonna like all over the place so everybody sees that I'm involved. And you can lose track of what's really the decisions you're making, the values you hold, and how it moves you forward, or how it moves us forward, or how it moves society forward. Those are different things that I see on a daily basis, but continually scrolling because the information's there is kind of an interesting dilemma. It's there and I don't want to be left out, but is it really there? And is it really helpful?
Yeah, a lot of thoughts come up for me from what you
Mhm,
said.
mhm.
Uh, and the the constant energizing of energy, information sharing, and our ways to access that, or the ways it accesses us,
Yes.
because we get stuff too. I mean, we're online,
Mm-hmm.
we have an inbox,
Mm-hmm.
we get stuff that we are looking for,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's kind of information that's looking for us, external from us. It's sourced external, and it pops into our inbox without it's being requested from us.
That's right. That's right.
So, the reality of the constant flow is is and this is another thing I wanted to talk with you about.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have to name everything? Do we label everything? It seems to be a need to label something.
My short answer is no. And that sounds very definitive. There's a lot of things I see, and I sort of think of these things like buckets. I can put it in the bucket, and I don't have to label it to put it in the bucket. All I know is I wanted to remember it. Now, end of the month, end of 6 weeks, I'll go back through that bucket. And I'm always intrigued. It's sort of like a treasure hunt, what I find in there. And then I start asking my questions. What was so interesting about this? What and then it's a different conversation because I've taken the time to sit down and look at the bucket instead of trying to automatically tag it into a bucket that's about something over there because I don't know yet. And to me, that's the adventure of life. You're trying to be open to things that you're not used to reading, not used to seeing, things that make you smile, things that make you jump up and down. But instead of just automatically reacting to that, you're saying, at least I say, is I want to come back and read that when I have more time. I want to come back and look at that more time. And I want to see how this connects with other things I was thinking about. And that opens the door to think about what's my focus? Is it on myself? Is it on others? Is it on community? Is it on values? Those are sort of the pathways I go down to see how it's informing my thinking. But the deeper part is how does it inform my behavior? How do I shift my behavior, change my behavior, reflect on my behavior? And that's just what I do with that. But this labeling of every micro piece of detail that flies in, no, I can't because then I've jumped ahead of understanding the whole. Now I'm just understanding the piece, and the piece doesn't have a context, and that's for me important. The context is all the different thinking, not just one over another. So that's what I find about labeling.
Yeah, I'm I'm struggling a little bit with this labeling because I can
Mm-hmm.
see a purpose because it may help us be organized because
Mm-hmm.
we get a lot of random thoughts and then how do, something sort of resonates on one level and we want to keep track of it.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have a way of tracking that or recalling it, even if we move on or move along to something else. So, oh, I remember that because of, and at the same time, I think the minutia of all these micro
Mm-hmm.
labeling identifiers it can be overwhelming for me in some way. I mean, you rack your brain and where do I know that or where do I not know that? And it
Mm-hmm.
it becomes a sort of information monster.
Yes. It, it's like in the old days with filing cabinets. You've bought your fourth filing cabinet, and then you
Okay.
stand and you
You looking in
stand
my room?
you stand in the front of the filing cabinet saying, I remember that there was this file I did, and I'm not sure when it was, but the only reason it comes to my mind is this question I have today. It took me back to that memory or that event and things like that. And I think that's one of the things that I struggle with, other people struggle with, is that you can't always have that what I call instant recall or instant access. But on the other hand, you must confess, digging through the files is rather interesting because you see things, you read things, you're like, I wrote that, I actually did that. Oh my word! And so that's one of the fun parts when you have that. And I think that I've learned is that you have to slow down at that point. You're not going to you have to admit you're not going to find it in 32 seconds. So just that's it. Just go. You're looking for this. Can you remember it was alpha order, was it event order, and then you go looking for it. But I find along the way you run into other stuff. It's like, oh wow, where'd that come from?
Oh, I forgot all about that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Memories are good to a point. At the same time, we can get overwhelmed with
mm-hmm.
memories
That's right.
and to recall those memories. And then we bury them somewhere deep within our sphere of,
Mm-hmm,
and then we have something physical that we go through the file. It has been years, and then it prompts a recall of that memory,
that's right.
something we put deep within our memory.
Mm-hmm.
And it then connects with another concept of letting go.
And that to me is when you start saying things like, that was this, that's what I learned from that, but I don't have to defend, argue, recall, rewrite. I can move forward. And I think that's the hard part was what is if the memory of the random idea is good, we will defend that to the end of time. If the random idea is bad, we're taught to dismiss it. And I always say to people, it's not one's good and one's bad. One was really difficult and one was really happy and satisfying. And so you have to sort of take time to reflect and say, so in the one that was really difficult, what do you remember? What actually was difficult about that event?
What about that? And
Was diff
how did you respond or react to that? And how did you
that,
process those
that
moments?
that's right. And from that, is there anything that you want to take away that you've learned about yourself? Learned about yourself. Because I think that's the thing. We're always great to learn about the things that are successful about ourselves, but we never take about the things that were really challenging and hard. And in the middle of all that, there's something we did right. There's something we actually made it possible for us to get through that. And I think that's where the struggle is for a lot of people because if it was bad, they're bad, therefore it's a bad event. And that rhythm just drives me bonkers because that's not, that's a great way to end up saying I'm a bad person because I had a bad event. That's not a good place to go. What were the facts around the event? What was your reaction in that event? But the part I'm talking about is there's some learnings from that event and they're hard to talk about. But don't get me wrong, they're not the sort of conversation stuff. They're the stuff that goes through that internal round the cycle trying to talk about, understand what happened. But I think if you enter that with a question that talks about what did I learn from that event? What what am I taking away from that that informs my life as a whole? And that's a different level of thinking and experience. And that's not easy. I don't think it's easy. But I love it when people have a really great event. They brag, talk about it, how wonderful they were, a rock star, nailed it to the rah, 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 rah. You know, that's why I always find the Olympics interesting to watch. All of those people on the starting line have been 100% dedicated to running that race. Just because the first three people finished doesn't mean the rest were really good runners. But we don't celebrate them. We don't talk about them. It's just sort of like they either had an off day, weren't up to the game, didn't run fast. No, 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 no. But if you look at the dedication they all put in, it's very important to take into account. They all won.
It's a reimagining
Hmm.
or a different way of imagining the same thing from an individual perspective.
Yes.
And who's to say that one is right over the other? Well, maybe from an external point of view, but how much are you going to value an external? I believe in a self valuation.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's whether I, as the individual, experienced or is experiencing, is whether I value it or not, and to what extent, to what depth, and to what degree.
So if we take this to the workplace, just to tie it, I don't want to
Sure,
lose this. Tie it to the workplace. It's interesting to me in the workplace that people believe that when people disagree, it's conflict and the workplace is evil. I just find it fascinating how they go leap, leap, leap. And all I'm saying is, I've never been in an environment where people disagreed. Well, why is that? Well, then there's something wrong. You look at musicians, you look at artists, they don't always agree, but they do some really great concerts. So so it's interesting to me that we lose track of this sort of self-reflection. I'll call it an honest conversation with self in the middle of something. The thing I remember the most was that in teaching aquatics, we used to tell people whenever you're in the water and you're under the water, your first priority is to get to the top of the water. We can show you 7 different ways to do it. But just remember, if you're under the water, don't take a deep breath, but find your way to the top. Because we said once you get to the top, you can do the next question, which is, where am I? You got to get yourself into a healthy enough state to get to the top, and then you can decide. But that's what I find interesting. People want to keep drinking the water and hope the water will be air. That's not a good place to be. It's really about the surfacing and having that discussion and
and
acknowledgement.
replenishment.
That's right, replenishing and it's just understanding you're in the middle of the lake. You can get mad about it, you can get upset about it, but right now your head's above water. That's a very good place to be. Next question is, where are we going to go from here? Basic decision. Swim further in the lake? I don't think so. Look for the shortest line to
Go to the,
yeah,
yeah.
shortest line to the land. Yeah, anything I can hang on to? Sort of basic questions you ask as you're sitting there. But that's what I find interesting. I think in life we learn those survival things, but when it's in our head and we just leave it there and don't really bring it to that broader perspective of our whole selves, that's where I think people get a little lost, get a little confused.
And if one only has their own thoughts swimming in their head, that can reinforce positive. At the same time, it can reinforce unhealthy stuff.
That's right. And the key to me is to help people understand that they can focus on the positive. My head's out of the water. That's a celebration moment. My head's out of the water. Now what's next? Instead of how did I end up in the middle of the lake? This is really terrible. Nobody should have left me out here. I should have had help. I don't understand what's going on. Help, help, help. Why isn't anybody coming? Okay, screaming for help. I understand that one. But right now, where are you? I'm in the middle of the lake. Okay, this is where I am. The circumstances led me here. We can debate that all day long. But what I know, I'm in the middle of the lake. I'm a pretty good swimmer, but I need some direction. That's my next little victory march. I find direction. Then I'm not going to swim this all at once, so we'll see what happens. See if my body drifts in the current. We'll play this out a little bit, test a little bit. What's really going to work? And step by step by step, you get to land. That's the difference. Is that in aquatics we teach people that. We teach people that. I find in the workplace we don't teach people that. We teach them that any sort of change in plan is a major catastrophe, requires some screaming and shouting and belittling people because it wasn't perfect. But the question is, have we come to the surface and seen what's really going on? Or are we just mad because we've had a disruptive moment? And that is something to me that I think we try to help people understand. You're not always going to agree with everybody at work, and they're not always going to agree with you. However, if you can understand that a disagreement is not a personal attack, you may be in a different place. They may say it is a personal attack because maybe that's the only way they know how to disagree. Doesn't mean you have to join them.
I think that's a major struggle for people.
I would agree.
That the differences that we experience,
Mm-hmm.
especially when they don't are not sourced from us, they come externally. There's a tendency to see them as a threat, a contrariness to what we believe, or what we think, or what we're led to believe, or what
Yeah,
we're told to
to
believe.
believe. Yep.
And it undermines our sense of confidence in what we believe and how
Yeah.
we approach things. We second guess it. We maybe react to it in an ill-informed way, and it goes down the rabbit hole And that traditional reference you made with conflict,
Mhm.
it's generally perceived from my experience as being a negative,
Yes.
though that's not the understanding and approach that I try to convey and I follow.
Hmm.
It's a change of the circumstances, and that can be disruptive. Yet that's not bad. That can be conflict can be very positive. It's how we take those moments and experiences and what pathway we work with to create for them, or
Hmm.
we allow to be created for us
Yes.
without having connection to the moments as they will happen and being a contributor to those moments. So they're imposed on us or we just follow. And I appreciate it's more complicated because when you're in a workplace, you have your supervisor, your manager, and you believe you got to follow the leader
Yes.
and do as they say and not question it because again, there's other factors to, their personality, how they've treated people when you've opened
Hmm.
your mouth
Hmm.
and it's been different from what has been shared.
Yes. In the workplace to me is a very complex space, um, because you have people who bring their understanding of being around people to the workplace from their family life, community life, things like that. And then you have the workplace that has either a set of values or norms or principles, whatever it is. And it's sort of like these two opposite, maybe few things in common, collide in this place called the workplace. And what's interesting to me is nobody talks about it. It's just assumed that you'll fit into the workplace culture or you'll adopt the workplace culture. And yet it's sort of like it's contradictory to me. A football team, no matter how good you are and what team you came from, when you come to this team, you play with the playbook of the team. They have spring training, fall training, whatever it is. You go to this training camp to practice routines, coach gives you plays, all that sort of stuff. But you learn not only about the work, but you learn how you're going to work together. Now, I just find it interesting in the workplace. They don't do that. They just bring people on board, get them orientated, get in the job, get them working to be productive. But I just find in the arts and sports that they spend a lot of time with these people in these camps and practices and routines. These are highly talented people. And I think one of the reasons they do that, it's part around that cultural ability to listen, disagree, but the goals remain the same. Great concert. We win games. We also lose games. When we lose games, we learn from that. So we go to the next game, we improve our chances to do that. And that's one of the things I really wish in the workplace would shift is that they spend so much time trying to narrow people down to focus on things that they're struggling with. And then they're shocked that the performance doesn't go well. Then they think they'll do corrective action and then they'll be better. So I always tell people who are managing in leadership roles, please make sure you keep in touch with your people so when there's something difficult happens, they're happy to see you and talk about it. However, don't do the practice. You only talk to the people when you're mad at them. Because then when they see you coming, they'll assume you're mad at them.
They've labeled it as a
Hmm.
negative and
That's right.
something that I'm going to face some kind of possible punishment
Hmm.
for something that went wrong.
Exactly. And but I don't think a lot of people realize that because they're very busy people doing very busy things. And this is just a problem. They need to step in, solve it, and then go back to the busy things. Where the paradox is if more time is spent with the people you lead, the people who directly report to you, to help them understand the cultural behavior you expect them to do with the people that report to them, you set a different workplace. This approach where they try to change the whole culture at one time always mystifies me because I'm sort of like people wait that out. They just sort of say, yeah, there was retreat on Saturday and Sunday, and it was really nice. Now we'll just wait till we get back to normal in about 2 weeks.
Things will settle down again.
Yes, yes, yes. So that's why I say I think it's an interesting dilemma. And now we're into this sort of economic environment that's not crystal clear. Lots of stuff going around us globally, provincially. I think people struggle with that one because they're going to work and they're doing the work, but they got one eye open to sort of wonder if something's going to happen to them. And that in itself is, when people are wondering, am I going to get the axe today? They let go of 9 people yesterday. I don't know how you get really good productivity out of that in terms of people feeling they're making a difference. If they're going to work wondering if this is their last day, their last month, things like that.
Yeah, there's so many things, that's from this conversation
Hmm.
that's arisen for me that relates to a lot of my own thinking and teaching approach and
Hmm.
concepts and the struggles that I have, the struggles that people have, the struggles with people that are working because just because if I'm teaching something, coaching something, mentoring something, there's no assurance that the person on the receiving end is going to one understand
Hmm.
or even appreciate
Hmm.
or comprehend
Yes.
or even adhere or follow through with
Hmm.
what is being communicated. I mean, there's no guarantees in any of this. Life is what's that idiom we know with life? Taxes and death. Is there something else? Otherwise, it's like a, a free for all that you try to put or sort into an organized way that is more clearly understood. And I don't say the word clear, understood clearly or more clearly because I believe there's always going to be some kind of struggle with what was said, what was meant by what was said, how it wasn't said. And I think those are good feeders for continued conversation and discussion and
Hmm.
relationship building.
Yes.
Because if we just assume that what we were informed or told, that it's without the consideration of asking another person for clarification or creating or building conversation together, that we're going to make these assumptions. And a lot of us know that assumptions are the be all and end all for misunderstanding and misdirection and going down the wrong pathway.
And, and that comes to the heart of, for me, conversations take time. There's no there's no speed course for that. And I think one of the things I've observed is that people don't want to do that work. They just want to get an answer and move. And the second part of what you just said is in terms of the relationships, the work relationships. One of the reasons why people are working together on something is because either the complexity or the location, like building a house, requires minute to minute collaboration and communication in order to do the work. In other words, if you're hauling 2x4s up to the second floor, you need to talk about that so they don't land on somebody's head. Just that basic. If you're measuring and cutting wood, you have to know, like, what's the measurement, because it's not going to be exactly the same all the way down the roof. The I think the dilemma is that people want less contact and relationship responsibility so they can do their thing. And if they believe their thing is the right thing to do, then we don't really need this other feedback or input or discussion. And so always think of the situation where I wonder often when people say they're going to deliver a product or service, if the people who actually make the product or service actually know what's going to happen. Or are they just showing up at work and it's sort of like, today you're going to X, today you're going to Y, today you're going to Z. But they don't know what the difference between X, Y, and Z is because the assumption is they're employees, so they can go to X, Y, and Z. Now, X, Y, and Z may X and Y may be what they normally do, but usually Z is like never seen this before. Like what
Yeah, that's the last word. That's the last letter in the alphabet. I haven't gone that far actually.
It's but I think in the workplace is that working on building concrete working relationships that embrace difference of a perspective, embrace supporting people as they're trying to express a different perspective, and understand how to take the perspective into account instead of slamming the person they're hearing it from. I think that would be the workplace where the biggest HR problem would be we don't have any vacant positions. Why is that, sir? People show up here every day. What makes your place special? I don't know. They listen and talk to each other. Oh, you don't have a billiards table or free lunch? No, we're pretty good. And when you talk to those people when they go on vacation, nobody's calling them because their colleagues have covered them while they're away. And when somebody is sick or having a problem in that workplace, somebody phones them and says, "How are you doing or what do you need?" Now, I may be talking in utopia language, but I don't think I am. I think people really want to do that. And that's the problem. You got a lot of employees here in the back of their heads dealing with this dissonance. Like, this is what I really want. And I thought this workplace was going to be like this, but it really seems to be. And so in my quality courses, there was a gentleman who taught us one night about the importance of quality. And he said, if you're really doing your quality program well, when people go home at night and their family asks that dreaded question at dinner,
That was the day.
how was the day? That person doesn't roll their eyes and say, I got to tell you about today. It was the most awful. And think about that. Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter weekend, holidays. I think if senior leaders had to sit at some of those dinner tables, but nobody really knew who they were, I wonder how they would respond if they heard what people thought about their workplace, what they experienced in their workplace. And then I wonder, out of all those random experiences, what would they do different?
You're presenting what resonates for me in terms of
Mm-hmm.
the foundation, relationship building, relational approach,
Mm-hmm.
valuing each person regardless of the quote hierarchy or the power dynamic as
Right.
another fellow human being,
Mm-hmm.
and honoring that person in such a way that the expectation is that we don't need to be in that traditional hierarchy of power dynamic. And for me, the relational is more conflated, it's more plateaued. And that's why, for me personally, with regard to supervision,
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a construct of many workplaces because they believe it. And I'm not going to fight every workplace. I'm going to
Right.
pick my battles. Yet at the same time, my processing of the word supervision relative to other words like leadership or mentorship,
Mm-hmm.
I don't, my supervision style is more plateaued, equilibrium. Yes, the truth is I would have a power dynamic over another person
Mm-hmm.
because I've been identified as being responsible for the performance evaluation of another
Right.
person was subordinate to me.
Hmm.
These are all terms that I will respect to a certain point and
Hmm.
honor. At the same time, I'm not going to be ever present thinking to unpack the concepts of what those mean when I'm in a quote workplace in a
Hmm.
relationship
Hmm.
with members of the team.
Right.
Oh no, that person, oh, I need to act this way with you. Well, of course, I'm going to try to be respectful. Well,
Hmm.
of course, might come across as an assumption, but at the same time, I believe in the plateau of relationship building, supervision, and it still works and it can work for the most part. I know that I did have a struggle where I was before with
Hmm.
some people who retained, and I'm throwing it back on them, regardless of my attempts to try to conflate things, wasn't their approach to the same kind of thing. So it became a bit uh, more tense, um, challenging,
Hmm.
and I just said a statement. You got to pick your battles. So I'm not gonna I'm not gonna continually have this energy of negativity. I'm going to I'm going to reimagine the situation, and there's only so much I can do. I think we talked about this for the first time. Who's
Hmm.
responsible for understanding the message? Maybe we haven't at the last one we recorded, but I think we talked about this in the past. When you're communicating something,
Hmm.
who's responsible, the sender or the receiver? So we decided, and I concur, that it's a shared responsibility on that. So there's only so much we can do, only so far we can go. We can't control because that's not part of our interest. Some leaders might like to control and minimize and marginalize, which is true. I'm sure
But
you have workplaces like that.
that's right.
No.
I think that's true. And I think part of the thing I like about a hierarchical structure, because I look at it slightly different, it shows me who's accountable for whom. So I mentioned earlier, as I said, the CEO is responsible for the people around that CEO table, the senior team. I have a built-in expectation that CEO is conducting themselves in a way that demonstrates the values of the corporation to that senior level. That senior level is accountable to the people that report to them. And I expect them to demonstrate that same behavior, the same values in leadership. So to me, the organizational chart, for lack of better words, yes, it's a control and command diagram. But on the other hand, I think it gives clarity sometimes because some people feel as the CEO, I'm responsible for everybody in the corporation and all their and I'm sort of like, that's a nice dream. But that's not really going to happen. Yes, your behavior must be consistent with what the corporation says are their values and principles. But let's be clear who's responsible for who. So if I'm doing something that's quote unquote called frontline, I expect my boss to reflect what this corporation's about. And in the development of the people I'm working with, if relationships are important, I expect that there's some understanding of how that develops, evolves, get resolved, things like that. But the thing I think's happened in the last, I'd say before the pandemic, I'd say 2010 to 2020, the values crept out of being something in the organization to being something nice on the wall and on the website. One of the things I always ask when it comes to mediation, I say, so can I get a copy of the values of the corporation? And standard answer is, why do you need those? I said, well, I need to know where this set of activities has either crossed the line or done something with the values. Well, what if their behavior has nothing to do with the values? I said, it just raises a different question. So And it's really intriguing to me how many people don't even pay attention to the values. They just copy the last set from the last set from the last set, when the question really is, how do they guide your thinking, decision, relationship building, and how people work with each other? It's a key. And the other thing I've noticed is that when people do interviews, they never ask about the values.
Because maybe they haven't actually identified those.
Well,
Possibly.
that's right. Well, I'm thinking about the corporation. To
Yeah.
ask you questions on past experience, skills, experience, what you would do, da, 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 da.
The usual.
The usual. There's no conversation on the values. And I've said to people, so you've hired a person, now you're upset with them because they violated the values. Did you even talk to them about that? I said, did you even talk to them about what that looks like from a behavioral standpoint? Oh, so those are sort of things I think that in today's complex workplace, that's part of the problem. So when you think of random thoughts, what's intriguing to me is this is random behaviors. And they don't get really named or identified until they cross a line. And when they cross a line, there's action plans and things that carry on. But these things, it just reminds me of that game, you pulled the hammer back and the ball went pinging off the different things until that's what it reminds me of. It's like these are random behaviors, they're pinging around. Some hit others, some don't hit others. They go back and forth. And then if it hits the right place, the jackpot, a little policy flag comes and says, oh, we got to talk to you. We've hired a mediator. We're going to have a conversation. But
And then the heart starts to palpitate like it's perceived or understood something's wrong here. I've
hmm
done something wrong and
hmm
I'm being judged on that.
hmm And and the other trend I'm watching right now is if you say mediation, they all freak out. But if you say facilitation, they say, oh, okay.
It's an easier word to process and make sense of
I
in
think
some way,
so. I
or
I, I think so.
perceived to be. Yeah. Okay.
Perceived to be yes. The third party mediators coming in to talk to you. Who's that? Well, it's a random person we've asked to do it. Oh, so it's the movement of language
Hmm.
um, is sort of to me is like moving at a slower pace than the moving of scrolling. Scrolling sort of like second by second, but subtle language changes I find very, very intriguing. Um, we don't talk about a bad work environment, we talk about a toxic working environment. And all I can see in my head is, gases and fumes floating above people's heads and people choking and coughing. But I'm just saying it's the language, the setting, and it'd be interesting to know what are the thoughts that run through people's heads at the end of the day, or at the beginning of the day, or Sunday night before they go to work.
I had I'm starting to encroach into other people's LinkedIn
Mm-hmm. Profiles.
posts,
Mm-hmm.
posts, and make some random comments. But they're not
Mm-hmm.
random; they're based on the theme
Mm-hmm.
of what the person is posted. And there was one the other day with the person used the word snitching.
Oh wow. I only heard that in TV.
Yeah, it's a certain context. So I'm gonna try to see if I can access that feed
That's
to,
that's interesting use of language.
and that's what
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're gonna get it. I even said on my comment, and that's the point I was trying to make, that the use of the word, I mean, the sense that there was something snitching,
Mm-hmm.
that you had to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
My inference was that with the use of the word snitching in the in the in the post, there's a context of already something that's quote dysfunction. I didn't use the word dysfunctional, but it relates that there's something not working. with regard to the
Yes.
culture.
Yes.
And that was something that I I left it at that because I really want people to figure out things for themselves, but I'll speak to it to some point. But yeah, snitching. And this is
Well,
a person who's,
mhm.
somebody who's about doing a similar kind of work.
Well, it's like the question, um, we use the word investigation.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now, if you put this in TV language, the only place you really see investigations is on the police shows,
CSI.
CSI, detectives. Okay. But for
Yeah.
the average person, we don't see investigations every day. Snitching is the word you just used. Okay. Mediation. Now, you watch anything on TV, the behaviors you see under mediation range drastically. The law stories have the mediator come in there in a well-dressed suit. They sit down. This is what you do. This is what you do. And it's very good. Okay. So you get some narrow perspectives on that. Then when you get into facilitation, it's really warm and fuzzy and it's happy and they got games. They play with Lego bricks. They're really nice people, great meals, really wonderful experience. Then you get into teachers, and teachers now call themselves facilitators. So I haven't quite figured out what that link's about, but they call themselves facilitators. And then you have coaches by the thousands who coach everybody and everything under the sun, from sports to your mental health well-being. But my only point is, if I was an HR director, what do those things technically mean? When I hire an accountant, I know exactly what it means. When I hire a doctor, I know exactly what it means. When I hire a teacher, and if that teacher's for elementary, secondary, different language school, university, skills for academic, we know what those things are. But I find in our society today, we're so busy looking for the nice word, we can miss the underpinning of what that nice word means. And then we layer on different types of titles on top of that word that we're not comfortable with. It drifts. And it really does create confusion in the workplace. And it creates confusion in HR. And the thing that's always struck me is you can teach people, as you said earlier, coach them in a behavior and help them practice that behavior. But the number one comment I get back is, "Oh, I'm not trying that at work." No, no. If it fails, I'm in deep trouble. So we're not trying that. So then I begin to wonder, well, what are we doing here? Um, so we try to help people with behaviors, thinking that help them in the environments they're in. But if they're coming back and saying, well, I can't do that there, then my brain goes to, I wonder what's going on there.
Hmm.
What's going on there? I don't know what's going on, but if you've come back and told me that, hmm,
Yeah, that feeds of itself into something else that's
hmm,
not being communicated directly. It's being communicated as a sign of something else.
yes. And that sign of something else, we'll go back to where you started in terms of random thoughts. My question is, signs or signals? Either one. How many radar devices are they carrying to track all these different foreign things that are coming into their being that informs their decisions on what they're going to do?
And also the randomness of all those thoughts and the
Mm-hmm.
sharing of those
Mm-hmm.
in unexpected moments and times, especially, when you have a mediation process or you have a
Mm-hmm.
facilitation process, it's not scripted per se.
That's right. It's and and so I picture in a room, this is my I picture them sort of like those old TV shows where the air traffic controller's sitting there and they got a stack of planes they're putting up there and they're watching them come in and they're making sure they're at the right altitude so they don't bump into each other. And I'm saying to myself, is that how a participant participates in something? They got the radar up, they have a list of what they think should be coming in and what shouldn't be coming in, and they're watching this radar. Just watching this radar.
And for me, what's the traditional understanding of why there's radar? It's to identify threats.
Yes.
And threats are things that are understood to be negative,
Yes.
contrary to our sense of trust and safety, and that we also have to eliminate maybe that threat.
So when the threats become people, then we start eliminating the people because it eliminates the threat. But it's sort of like that's sort of putting a filter on your radar because now you're only looking at people, but you're not looking at any other contributing factors, such as a thunderstorm, hailstorm, crosswind, emergency flight, emergency deviation, because you're still looking for actual threats, missiles, guns, grenades, something or other. So it is intriguing to me that here we are at 2026 with more technology than we could ever dream of from 1996. Like if we went back to 1996 and told, they'd say we're losing your mind. Jerry, what do you mean? Oh, you have a cell phone. It's more powerful than a computer. What computer? More powerful than the mainframe at the University of Waterloo. Jerry. We're we got Fortran. We're using cards. What do you want? Here we are. And it's almost like we don't know what to do with it. Then we have people, talented people who are trained solely in their craft and not in building relationships.
And I'll say, when people go into, let's say, mediation,
Hmm.
there's a perceived notion of
Hmm.
threat of the other person from the other person. And so, how much effective listening and productive conversation can occur when people are fixated on that threat and objectifying an individual and not seeing the deeper perspective of their ability and the capacity to contribute to why you're having the mediation, which I would believe is to create some kind of positive change from where it's at. I'm trying to simplify it
Hmm.
to a frame. So if they're if their mind is filled right from the get-go, even before they come into the room, that the person on the other side is an opponent, they're a threat, they need to be marginalized, and whatever they say is not going to be valued. That's why that's why many times things
Hmm.
don't follow through at the table,
Hmm.
don't occur, or they take much longer. And the pre-mediation, the opportunity to meet with individuals to get a better sense, and like you said, to you go into a workplace to find out what their values are, will contribute heavily to getting a sense of where they're at before
Hmm.
they you bring them to accompany you into a space with another person that they have this contradiction of thought and thinking and belief and decision making.
And and that's really important because this whole concept of you're going to mediation, you're going to court. It has the same sort of weight.
Psychology.
That's right. Whereas what what can be done to listen to people individually and not necessarily listening to the details of what's happened to them, but listening to where they're at. Because at some point they'll arrive at a point where they want to go into that room. Not we're listening to get them into the room. We're listening to see what would be most helpful for them and what's important to them so they can go into the room. See, this is why I'm a big fan of we don't start with the room stuff. We start with who are you and where are you at and what's this about and
Uh-huh.
if we need to have another conversation, we'll have another conversation. We need a third conversation, we need a fourth conversation. And at some point that person is going to say, I get the vibe of this. I can go and be with that other person. And you do that with the other person or the other two people. But the the thing I find interesting is that when the process overwrites the individuals, then it isn't a people process. It's a structure of which they're supposed to fit into this without any regard at all, and it doesn't work well.
Yeah, so we're getting into some good meat here, and I know
Hmm.
we have to
Yes.
we have to shift away.
Yes.
And if we recall this for next time,
Well, we'll have the recording, so we'll remember what we recall.
okay, good, good reminder for me. Yeah, for sure. And I did want to also explore
Hmm.
further from our first time
Yes.
of the recording, the aspect of AI. And
Yes.
I've identified something for me. I'm not going to
Okay.
reveal it now.
No, no, that's for next month, next
That
week.
really is core to how I see the distinction of
Okay.
machine relative to human or human relative to machine.
Makes sense.
So I believe I've latched onto that because I've been struggling like to say clearly.
Where does it
So
fit?
I'm not going to leave it with you only as a cliffhanger.
Sounds like a good plan. I'm gonna end our recording. Great
Yeah,
conversation today.
yeah, yeah.
Here.